with the latest on the corporate front, all the market trends, expert opinion, and sound business advice. It is your unique window into the business world, direct from the heart of China.
Hello and welcome to Biz Today. I'm Zhao Yang in Beijing. Coming up, we will have half an hour of business news and analysis. On today's show, China's manufacturing industry has topped the world for 15 years. What are the new trends? The ice and snow economy is heating up in northeast China. Tourism is booming. And now let's begin with our top story. China's manufacturing industry has remained the world's largest in terms of overall scale for 15 years. According to the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology, the country's industrial value reached 40 trillion yuan or $5.6 trillion in 2024, contributing more than 40% of the overall economic growth. The industrial output of new energy vehicles was up 43% year-on-year, while the industrial robots and solar panels was up 36% and 21% respectively. The ministry intends to initiate new plans to stabilize growth in 10 key industrial sectors and shore up efforts for cities and provinces with their own industrial advantages. So what are the main factors driving China's manufacturing industry in the past decade? Which sectors are taking the global lead? And what challenges may they face in the new intelligence age? For more on this, joined us on the line now are Chen Jiahe, Chief Investment Officer at Novum Archi Technologies, and also Yan Liang, Professor of Economics, Willamette University. So I will start with you. China's manufacturing industry has flourished in the past 15 years. What are the main factors, do you think, driving the country's manufacturing?
Well, I think there are really a whole list of driving forces, and I would say some of them are really difficult to be replicated by other countries. So if you look at the longer history, back in the 50s and 60s, China already has developed a heavy industry that laid the foundation, I think, for the modern day manufacturing and industrial sector. China also has really the government's strategic policies to encourage industrial production and tech innovations. The reform and opening policies help to engineer the processing, trade production, and integrate China into the world economy, for example, by attracting FDIs and encourage technological transfers, and also encourage industrial production and export, which boosts the market size and also promote the competitiveness of the Chinese industrial producers. In addition, I think, again, government plays a very important role in, for example, lay out the infrastructure investments to build China's very complete infrastructure network from road to rail to port. And this is very essential to bring the supply chains together and to be able to ship the products not only all over the countries, but outside of China. And last but not the least, China has, 997 million labor force, peaked in 2014. Now, China still has 740 million labor force, and they're increasingly educated and more skilled. And so that also helped to promote a lot of innovative entrepreneurs and skilled talents. And finally, the efficient financial market has helped to produce a lot of important investment financing to support industrial production. So in other words, these are really very essential ingredients, and this whole list of factors are really important to make China the current industrial powerhouse at the global stage.
And Jiahe, so how do you compare China with other countries like India, Vietnam, Malaysia, in the process of manufacturing development?
Well, when we look at China, when we compare this country with other countries, China has a very unique advantage. I mean, if we just compare China with most of the other industrial countries, one of the largest advantage that China has is its large population and huge size of the market. Because in modern economy, industries are so developed, so it's very hard for you to grow a very strong industrial economy and a very complete industrial economy if there is only a population of tens of millions of people, it basically can't be done because the country or the market would be too small to complete an industrial chain. For example, if we look at Singapore is a very developed country. It got a per capita GDP, I think it's around 80 or 90,000 USD per capita. That's a very high level. But Singapore is basically concentrating on finance and trade and tourism. It can't concentrate on industry because it's too small with the size of the population. So that's one thing. China has got a huge population. So only this factor enables China to win over many countries like Vietnam, South Korea, Malaysia, these countries. And the second factor is that China's government is quite capable. I mean, if you look at India, India has got a similar population comparable to China. But if you look at what China's government has been doing, is that they have been effectively managing the growth of the industry. The government's building of a huge amount of infrastructure, and leading the growth of the industry, building universities to educate engineers fitting for the industries, and even using the financial system to support the whole industrial growth. So it's a huge amount of work that China's government has been doing. This helps China to win over its competitors who might have the similar size of the population. Another factor also contributes to the strong mathematical and engineering talents that Chinese people do have. I mean, if you know about how good Chinese people are really good at math, look at the global competition between high school students in the subject of mathematics. You find that Chinese people are really good at engineering and mathematics. This is also a very important factor for developing an industrial chain.
And Yan, so how do you compare China with other countries like Japan, South Korea, India, Malaysia, et cetera, in the process of manufacturing development?
Well, I agree with Jiahe. I think size matters. When you look at all these claims that, for example, Vietnam is the next China, the matter of the fact is that Vietnam actually really relies on China for their intermediate goods. 70% of the trade between China and Vietnam consists of intermediate goods. Other than that, I think Jiahe is correct that, Vietnam's economy is about $429 billion GDP, which is, 1/39th of China's size, and they have a 51 million labor force, and China's is 15 times as large. So just in terms of the size, I don't think Vietnam is able to really, in a way, replace China as the largest, manufacturing powerhouse, even though Vietnam does benefit from, for example, the trade diversion from China and FDI diversion from China. India, I think, as a matter of fact, their manufacturing size has been shrinking. In terms of the percentage to GDP. Their manufacturing to GDP was 19%, peaked in the mid-2000s, and now it's only about 14%. And India has been really focusing more on service sector development. And I think Malaysia, the same sort of the case as in Vietnam. They have a much smaller market size, much less developed infrastructure, much smaller skilled labor force, and so on and so forth. So in a way, I think, no other countries in the world right now can really, in a way, replicate China's industrial capacity.
And yeah, actually, China now emphasizes the emerging and future industries and green transformation. And last year, the industrial output of new energy vehicles was up by, 43% year on year. So what has China done right to support the development of this NEV industry, and why does China need it?
Well, that's an excellent question. I think the benefits that China has, for one, is China is really an early developer of, for example, lithium-ion battery technologies. And they're also very skilled in developing some of the softwares, gaining the experiences from the early development of, smartphone softwares. And so now all of these technologies are very essential and important for the NEV sector. So at the recent the World Economic Forum, the co-president president of CATL made a speech, and he basically said right now in terms of the EV, it's not really just about the electric part. It is also the intelligent part. So instead of EV, it's more of EIV. So in other words, all these softwares is also very important to upgrade the driver experiences and make China's NEVs very competitive. Now, what else China has done right, I think in addition to these very innovative entrepreneurs, China's government also has a strategic vision to support the sector as part of the green development strategies, as you mentioned. So China has invested a lot in infrastructures, such as charging stations. China has 1.8 million public charging stations, and the United States has just a fraction of that. Chinese government also has used development banks and others to construct mining and processing facilities to enable the industry's development, not to mention public investments in R&D and so on and so forth. So I think all of these are important. And last but not the least, China also has a large market. I think many people worried about China's EV flooding in the global market. But the matter of fact is that 87% of the EVs are sold in the domestic market because of the good facilities, because of the smart, I think, government policies and incentives. It's actually very popular to purchase EVs in the Chinese market. So all of these, I think, are really important. And then why does China need it? Well, for many different reasons. One is strategic, sort of considerations about energy independence and sovereignty, because China does import a lot of oil and gas. So by promoting EVs and green energies, China can reduce dependence on imported energies. And also importantly, I think to preserve the environment, to pursue the sustainable growth, and also to promote technological innovations. So I think for all of these reasons, China is really emphasizing the development of an EV sector and other green technologies and green products.
And Jiahe, so I also want to talk about China's shipbuilding industry, because China accounted for over 50% of the global shipbuilding completions and 74% of new orders in the year 2024. So could you help us understand the competitiveness of China's shipbuilding industry? How strong is it?
Well, if you look at the data of China's shipbuilding industry, that China is having this large amount of new orders for ships. This really tells you that the shipbuilding industry in China is having its reputation in the global market, because we know that the global shipping industry has experienced a pretty bull market in the past few years. So it's a lot of new orders has been made. And 70% of these orders came to China because, the people who are running the fleets really know that if you give the order to China, you get the ships delivered on time with quality better than other markets. So they used their money to make their votes, and they say, okay, China is the country that produces the best ship in the world and with best efficiency. And this really reflects one part of how strong China's industry is. I mean, this is not the only place that China's industry is leading the global economy. But if you look at the production of solar panel, China produces about 90% of the solar panel of the world. So that's even more than shipbuilding. But shipbuilding is one industry that China is leading the global economy as well. And this is also benefited from China's very strong industrial chain and the large market, because we know that shipbuilding is a large industry. It needs a huge amount of people. I mean, usually if you order a ship, for example, if you go on and order a new truck, then it takes about 20 to 30 days for the factory to produce that. So it's not a very large industry. When you look at a truck, is not that large. But if you look at how large the ship is, it got tens of thousands of tons. And if you order a new ship, usually takes about 24 months to 36 months, which is 2 to 3 years to complete the ship. So this is a very large industry, and China is large enough to support this industry with the size of China's economy.
And yeah, so we talk about some, China's manufacturing, especially the high-end manufacturing, and we are now in this artificial intelligence age. So what benefits and challenges do Chinese manufacturers face?
Well, this is an excellent question. I think in the AI space, China these days are really making a lot of headlines. I think in terms of the challenges, we understand that the United States is imposing tax sanctions on China. For example, cutting off China's access to the most cutting edge semiconductor chips produced by NVIDIA, which is very important to help to train AI to build the foundational models and so on and so forth. But despite these kinds of tax sanctions, China has been making really leaps and bounds of progress in the AI space. So the DeepSeek right now is really the big talking point all over the place in the United States because DeepSeek was able to use just about 4% of the cost of OpenAI to be able to launch its large language models, the DeepSeek R1. Which actually perform in many areas better than the ChatGPT 4.0. And it is also providing open sources. So I think it's really, in a way, rocking the boat at this point in the entire AI space because it made many people and the industrial experts wonder whether or not we really need to continue to build these large language models and use hundreds of billions of dollars of investment where China is able to do this at a fraction of a cost. So I think this is just very interesting in the sense that China is able to innovate and to overcome some of these constraints on the software. And also China is making progress in producing GPUs as well. So I think when it comes to the challenges going forward, of course, this is going to be a very tense race, so to speak, right? The United States, EU, China now are really making a lot of investments and trying to attract global talents to develop the AI industry. And many other countries are basically left behind. And this is a very important area, not only for economic developments, but also for national securities and so on and so forth. So I think another challenge is how countries can come up with some kind of common governance rules to make sure the AI becomes a sort of a force for good, not to be abused or misused.
And Jiahe, so now the Chinese enterprises are in a new round of going overseas. They are going to North America, Southeast Asia, Europe to set up factories and branches. So how different is it for this wave of going overseas from the last one? What kind of global environment do they face and what's your suggestions for them?
Well, this is a very large question. I mean, the world is very different now compared with many years ago. I mean, you see a huge amount of changes, both from the factors within China and the factors outside of China. I mean, if you look at the competitiveness of China's manufacturers and companies, they are much stronger compared with like 2 or 3 decades ago. I mean, if you still remember the time that China started the economic reform back about 4 decades ago. Most of the factories in China back then were very small. We were learning from the global companies. We were doing very small, tiny parts of their jobs for them. Usually the hardest work, the most labor-intensive work, and the work with the least amount of profit back about 4 decades ago. But now Chinese companies are producing very competitive products in the global market. I mean, if you look at the mobile phones that we're exporting EVs to Europe. This really tells you how competitive these products are. But at the same time, the political pressure that comes, especially from the United States, has been rising. When facing these changes, I mean, China's companies really have to consider the political pressure in the future. If you are going to enter a market, you're going to make a huge amount of investment in this market. For example, make your advertisement, connection with your customers, customer service center, all these kind of investments. Even when you put some factories over there, you are talking about a business that will work out or not work out in the next decade or 15, 20 years. You're not talking about an investment in and out in 6 months' time. So you have to know the political relation between your own country and the hosting country over a long period of time. So this is something critically that China's companies are considering right now.
So yeah, actually the Trump administration has planned for the U.S. manufacturing reshoring. So So could they really reshore, or could the manufacturing jobs go back to the U.S.? And what do you think that strategy will have on the global manufacturing landscape and the supply chain?
While I don't think it's impossible for the United States to reindustrialize, I think there are many challenges, and I'm not even sure this is to the sort of the advantage to the U.S. economy. As we know, the U.S. has transformed into a post-industrial economy, and it's really based on the service economy. Service sector account for over 70% of the U.S. GDP. But I think more importantly, the U.S. has been really financialized its economy. So for all of these reasons, I think it's also important for their policymakers to consider what are the policy tools. So under Biden administration, the U.S. has passed 3 major industrial acts, like the Infrastructure Act, like the Inflation Reduction Act, and Science and Job Act. So some of these acts help to promote technological innovations and bring some manufacturing jobs in the, for example, semiconductor chips industries and some other tech-related industries. But once the Trump administration started to rule, they are going to rescind some of these industrial policies. So this is really create a very uncertain business environment because some of these investments is meant to be long term, and once the administration changes, then the policy changes. So this kinds of policy uncertainty and also the lack of consistent support from the government is not going to be conducive for the United States to rebuild its industrial capacity, and also not reining in the financial sector. As a matter of fact, Trump is going to double down on financial deregulation. Now, this is also not conducive for industrial production and investment, because if the businesses can get quick and high return from financial activities, then they would not have the incentives, right, to invest in the R&D in the industrial sector. So I think financialization is a big hurdle for the United States to revitalize its industrial sector. And for Trump, I think his main economic tool is tariff, right? So his idea is that we can tariff the imports, so that way we'll be able to build manufacturing jobs back home. Now, if we look at the data, the first term when Trump took office, the manufacturing to GDP ratio, it's about 11%. Today, it's 10.2%. So after all these tariffs, which Trump instituted and Biden inherited, the manufacturing sector in the United States did not grow as a percentage of GDP. It actually shrank. So that just shows that tariff is a very ineffective tool to really sort of revitalize the manufacturing sector in the United States.
Well, we're speaking with Yan Liang, Professor of Economics, Willamette University, and also Chen Jiahe, Chief Investment Officer at Novum Archi Technologies. And after a short break, China's ice and snow economy has been heating up. Stay with us. You're listening to Biz Today. I'm Zhao Yang in Beijing. China's ice and snow economy is heating up with diverse attractions driving winter tourism nationwide. This winter, the country's ice and snow tourism continues to welcome travelers, with the ice city of Harbin in Heilongjiang province remaining the hottest destination. Harbin is now preparing for international tourists for the upcoming Asian Winter Games. So, Jiahe, first, let's discuss Harbin, the northeast Chinese cities. Its winter are freezing, and it has organized Ice and Snow Festival for 40 years. But it was not until last winter that the city became an internet sensation. So what exactly is so special about Harbin that tourists find so fascinating?
Well, if you look at Harbin as a city for the winter tourism, it's been really famous for decades. I mean, when I was a kid, it was a famous city. I mean, everyone knows if you want to enjoy yourself during the winter, you go to Harbin because it got so much ice and ice city, ice show, all these kind of things. So they got a really long tradition. In the old days, what happens with the local tourism of Harbin is that someone thinks that he wants to have a winter trip. Then he book a ticket and then go to Harbin. But in recent years, the thing has been changing. We got very vivid social platform. So you just keep on looking through the app on your mobile phone. You see many people are sharing about their lives, how they are spending their winter, what kind of tourism trip that they have got. So it's more and more people are going to Harbin.
So how do you view the role of the ice and snow economy in driving China's broader economic growth, and how significant is the market potential?
Well, China's ice and snow sector grew by threefold in just 8 years. And the goal now, China, is to boost the industry's value to 1.5 trillion yuan by 2030. So when you just look at last snow season from December 2023 to 2024, China recorded over 385 million winter leisure visits nationwide, and that's a 38% from the year before. And the revenues have gone up by 50%. So you mentioned Harbin. So for their last snow season, they received over 87 million visitors, which is 3 times when you look at the year-on-year growth. And there are also revenues from these tourism has gone up by 500%. So this just shows how big potential the market is. And it's not just in terms of, the ticket sales or the local tourism that these kinds of snow and ice economy is going to create. I think we need to look at also other spillover effects when it comes to, for example, the whole transportation industry, because to go from one city to another, you need very good roads or high-speed rail. So all of these could help to boost the kinds of infrastructure developments, not to mention a lot of the infrastructure constructions to build these ski resorts and other, entertainment facilities. So this is another big growth potential, because we know China's investment in the service sector, in tourism sector, is still relatively low. So there's a great potential for that to improve. Otherwise, I think there is also other sectors like equipment manufacturing, right? So a lot of these ski equipment manufacturing sector will get the boost because of the growth of this industry. So I think overall, this is a growing industry, and it also provides a lot of spillover effects to other industries as well. And I think when it comes to the top priorities of boosting domestic consumption, I think this is important because cultural and tourism experiences and service sector, this is a huge sector to see potential consumption growth.
Well, we're speaking with Yan Liang, Professor of Economics, Willamette University, and also Chen Jiahe, Chief Investment Officer at Novum Archi Technologies. And that's all the time we have for this edition of Biz Today. I'm Zhao Yang in Beijing. Thank you so much for listening.